Hello and welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar, Separating the Backend from the Front End to Deliver a Great Customer Experience. We're delighted to see such a large audience and can't wait to dive right in. But before I hand it off to our presenters, I wanted to cover a couple of housekeeping items today. Just as a reminder, we're trying to keep this webinar at about 45 minutes today, so we can get you back on time for your next meeting. This is going to be recorded, so if you have a colleague that isn't able to join, or if something comes up and you have to jump off of the call to take a different phone call, don't worry. We're going to be recording this and plan to send out the recording in about 24 hours. You probably already noticed your microphone has been muted, so you don't have to worry about your background noise. But please don't take that as an indication that we don't want to hear from you. We would love to hear from you throughout this webinar. So please use the Q&A on the right side of your screen to ask us questions throughout the event. We have Q&A time allocated at the end of this webinar, so we definitely want to hear from you, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions during that time. I'm really thrilled at our really knowledgeable group of panelists that we have today. We've got decades of experience on this topic on the call. First, we're going to be hearing from Katie Beth DeShepper, our VP of Client Solutions. And we also have Jason Powell, our Director of our Full Implementations team, and Mike Gutierrez, our Senior Director of Technical Implementations, on the line to participate in the Q&A. So you can throw anything you have at us. We've got the A team here to help answer any questions you have. And this group is great and really approachable. So if you have any follow-up questions or just want to get some one-on-one time with them, I know they'd be happy to connect after the call. So with that, I'll keep it short and sweet, and I'm delighted to hand things off to Katie Beth, who we lovingly refer to as KB. So I'll acknowledge that right now because I'll do it throughout the webinar without even thinking about it to kick us off and get started.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for setting this up. And I'm excited to be talking to you all about the topic of why we believe having a separate backend from a front end really allows you some flexibility to really remove friction for your residents to interact with you. And that's really why Payit was founded. So Payit, just a little bit about Payit. Payit was founded in 2013, really on the premise of it should be easy, just as easy as utilizing your favorite e-commerce platform, whether it be Amazon or whomever. It should be simple because that's what we all expect. And the more you make things simple for people, the more likely they are to do it. And I think all of us know that. At least I know when I put my shoes out for my kids to get ready for school, they're more likely to get it done versus mom doing it. So regarding Payit, we're serving over 80 million citizens today across North America. So whether that be in Canada or the United States, whether it's a city, a state, or a county, we're able to serve those. And really at our center is something that we would really focus on around trust. So for citizens or for any user to trust any platform, they need to make sure that it's not only simple, but also secure. So security is at our center. We are PCI Level 1 compliant. We are built natively in the AWS GovCloud, and no one really started from there. Some have joined that, but we were built purposely in that cloud environment just for government. And then, of course, that's been recognized across a lot of procurement organizations as really the best way to approach citizen engagement. So I think I'm going to go on and start talking about our topic a little bit more. So, of course, I mentioned that Payit supports all levels of government, whether it's cities across services such as parking, property taxes, utilities, courts. Those are also things that are served at a county level. And then, of course, we also expand our service offering at the state level. So at the state level, we're serving DMVs, we're serving DHHS, so lots of different applications. And what's unique about Payit is the way that we've really focused our platform development is putting the resident at the center. And that allows us to have the flexibility to go across these different verticals And matter of fact, our platform allows a resident of a city, such as Kansas City, Kansas, which is part of a county, Wyandotte County, which is, of course, in a state, and that citizen can do services across all three of those jurisdictions with one profile, one wallet on one platform. And that's what's really unique about Pay It. With that digital platform focused on the resident at the center, it allows us to see that simplicity delivered for our agencies as well as the citizens themselves. With that, we're able to deliver an 82% increase in online dollars collected across several clients. And with that, it really not only perpetuates the digital adoption, the transformation of that digital choice, but it also leads to, of course, a decrease in the manual processes that exist today, whether that is going through manual checks and sorting through the mail or the office traffic. We've seen a 40% decrease in office wait times for state level clients. So if you think about, we're approaching summer and most of state level clients are starting to think about, oh my gosh, our offices are going to be crowded full of teenagers who are super excited to get their driver's license. How do we help those people who could easily go online, make sure that they are aware of that option and they feel confident to be able to securely transact? That's really where Pay It shines. And then, of course, we have a 50% increase then of agency revenue collected, which frankly leads to the ability for you as the agency to really be able to deliver the revenue for the services in which you're collecting. Quick story. So Jackson County, Missouri, which is where Kansas City, Missouri is located, they were able to fund their entire year in just 45 days of collected revenue. I don't know anybody else who's been able to do that. I mean, that's just such a cool story to say, hey, we funded our schools a year in advance because we move things online. Like, that's just a really cool thing to be able to talk about. And again, it's because we are thinking about the resident first. If I put my agency hat on and I think about, okay, what are all the things I need to do within an agency? I'm going to think about my data rules. I'm going to think about my security, the processes, and what my foot traffic is looking like. And so it's really hard sometimes to take that hat off and think about what would I want to experience if I'm just trying to come in and be part of that foot traffic? Well, that's really what we've done here. So we've really taken that focus instead of thinking about, oh, well, this is what I need to do because I am agency X and therefore I need to collect property taxes and you need to have this form and this form. And if you've moved, I need to see a utility bill. All that's important. But as a person, as Katie Beth, I am one person. I don't need to understand that I exist in all these different databases. I just know that you're my county or you're my city providing me my utility services and I pay property tax. So why don't you have access to my utility bill that says I moved? It's just kind of mind-boggling, which again is why everything is shifting to that resident first design to move from that left center picture to that more right center picture where it's really focused on the citizen or the resident is telling you, I've moved. Here's access to my utility, which is collected by a private entity. Let me upload that to you so that I can then pay for my property taxes or enable my utility because I have a bank statement that I want to send you. So it really changes how we think about the user being at the center, which frankly solves a lot of other problems that you may be talking about. You may be talking about how can we see that one citizen view? Well, there's other ways to solve for it, whether it's creating a data warehouse. And then you think about how do you make sure that Katie Beth is Katie Beth across all of these different siloed databases and who owns that information and what should be first, second, and third. I know all of you are probably nodding your heads thinking about, yep, all of those things have been discussed and no one has come up, or maybe some solutions have come up. But by putting the power of that interaction to the resident, based off of what they need to do with you, it really starts to simplify a lot of those conversations. And the citizen's happy. There's the resident has less friction. You get your money faster. It's just a little bit easier. Doing that can be hard, which is why we are talking today around separating the front end from the back end. So I think we have our first poll. So I'd love to know, Dawn, turning it over to you, what the audience is thinking about the modernization efforts and where to start.
Yeah, with some of that kind of inspiration Katie Beth shared, we'd love for you to share your response. To do that, you can look at the polls section on the right hand of your screen, and I see it's popped up now as well. What is preventing your agency from beginning or further pushing your modernization efforts? Pick one. I suspect you might need to think through a couple of the options. Uncertainty about what to do, the expense of replacing an older system of record, lack of available resources or personnel that's a part of those resources to make these changes, lack of resources to promote changes to residents. Pick one and hit submit, and we're anxious to see what results come back. I'll give us one more moment here. I see we've got about half of the responses so far, so I want to make sure everybody has time to pick. All right, we just got another flurry. Let's see if we can post the results here. If you go to the Close tab, you can see the full results, but I'll share that the far and away leader is uncertainty around what next steps to take. That isn't too surprising to me, given what Katie Beth just shared. And I think you're going to leave here today with some real actionable insights that you can take to help map that out. With that, KB, I'm going to hand it back over to you. Thanks, everyone, for participating in the poll.
Yeah, love seeing that feedback. I'm a pretty interactive presenter, so I'm so glad we were able to do polls, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to hear what everybody is interested in. So the it's not unique for people to not be sure where to start. If you think about all of the different kind of pulls on your day, your time, your priority, your dollars, some of it's just keeping the lights on and keeping everybody coming in your office and getting what they need done. And it's hard to think about kind of the bigger picture, even though we know we need to do something about it. So there's, of course, lots of ways to approach modernization. It's one of those elephants that you got to eat one piece at a time, but where to begin? And North Carolina had the same question. So North Carolina has had they have several, as you could all imagine, mainframes across the state. Some of them are more modern than others. And then there are some that are just kind of big behemoths that do a great job being mainframes. And one of those is for the DMV. This should not be surprising. So for the DMV, they have a 45-year-old mainframe system that runs their vehicle registration process. And then they have a separate driver's license mainframe that runs all the stuff about your identity. And of course, they don't talk. And I'm sure all of you are smiling going, I know this story. But what North Carolina decided to do is they were like, for us to be able to focus on all the things that we have to focus on, we need some help. And so they elected to say, hey, you know what? Payments is not just payments anymore. It's the one time that we can interact with every single resident in a year, which of course the elected officials are always really curious to understand. So they said, hey, we're gonna separate these things. Like that way, if you think about a citizen's view, a resident's view, they don't really want to understand that there's a mainframe that's 45 years old and probably shouldn't know that, because then it's not going to really make their opinion of the DMV any better. But let's create a surprising and delightful front end experience that's separate. So that way, if there's something that we have to do in the mainframe, we can kind of just do it. And is there a way to make the experience not show kind of that side? I think about, I'm from Kansas, so it's kind of like, don't pay attention to the man behind the green curtain. Let the modernization effort of that mainframe chug along at the effort it should to make sure that everything's still keeping the lights on, so to speak. But can we separate that out so that the resident thinks, man, those guys have it right. It was so easy for me to go online and to do this awesome transaction. I mean, we get comments where it was like, this was surprisingly delightful. Who says that about paying taxes on a vehicle? Well, the citizens of North Carolina actually do. So with separating and making that choice, so that was their first choice. Hey, we're gonna have this partner come in, pay it. We're gonna have this partner come in. We're gonna have them kind of create that experience that's frictionless, easy, simple, so that we can, when we modernize this mainframe that's 45 years old, we don't disrupt revenue coming in, which of course we started working with them in 2018. And so when the pandemic happened, we instantly had no concerns. Like the state was like, oh, thank goodness we had this plan. Because they had no disruption in revenue coming in for this service. Now, there were other disruptions across other systems. Of course, I'm sure we all experienced that. But for this, which of course is a huge chunk of the budget for the state, there was no disruption. So today we've served over 2.8 billion in revenue collected. And of course, this is vehicles alone. We've of course, because of the way our platform works, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we've added a whole bunch of other things because we have 6 million accounts. So 6 million, which the state of North Carolina is about 9 million drivers today. So 2/3 of all the drivers in the state are utilizing this service, which then it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. Can we add on? Can we think about what else would these people, if I change my driver's license, I'm changing an address. And so is there a way for someone else to understand that? Should we tell citizens, hey, it looks like you've moved. Here's the next thing you should be doing. That customer journey thing starts to kind of come to life a little bit. Of course, we already talked about the 40% decrease in wait times. And on average, we're doing about 3 million online transactions for license plate renewals in a year. And again, the reason we're doing this, and we've kind of talked about, the mainframe over here and that separation, right, between the two, it really allows this experience to kind of look like a swan or a duck on water. So to a resident, it's easy, it's clean, it looks fancy. I expect as an e-commerce user, everything else to be simple. And then I don't expect, because I used to have this expectation of government, I don't expect that to be easy, but it should be. And by creating this kind of layer of the top of the water, or the connective layer across all the government agencies, that allows the residents to see the things you want them to see, to have the experiences that you want them to have, and not be disrupted by the modernization efforts that need to occur. Because by separating these things and by starting from that vantage point, it allows you to start thinking about the art of the possible. So let's say we didn't do that. Let's say we didn't separate the front end from the back end. Then when we think about the back end only, we're going to start thinking about, okay, well, I need to think about all of the jobs that are running on a Sunday, and are they all running at the right time? And so then I need to make sure if I make a new change to a program, it's not going to disrupt the back end system running its daily cron job reports and all of, like, it becomes where all we're thinking about is keeping the lights on and not what can we do differently. So by making that separation, you kind of create two parallel paths of success, right? So you can think about, if you separate these two things, adaptive, you can be more adaptive to levy changes. You can be more adaptive to a single resident view. If you're only thinking about a back end and you don't separate these things, a single resident view just, I'll be honest, doesn't happen. It won't happen because your system of record probably doesn't include everything. And maybe you want it to, but you also know what that journey is going to look like. And so maybe 5 years later, we can do it. But if you separate it, you can do it now. And there's many agencies that are doing that today because they've made that choice. They can create one customer. They can allow them to do interagency dependent steps. I have to have my driver's license updated and then I can go turn on my water. Whatever those things are, they can have emergency notification. So it really creates the ability to have progress in parallel versus one or another type of a decision-making moment. So I think we're up for our next poll.
All right. Now we all know how to do this. Let's take a look here at our poll question. For your organization, what is the biggest driver to expanding digital services? Better collaboration among agencies, better online experience for residents, frontline employee collaboration and productivity, increased public participation and engagement, or optimizing operations and lowering costs? I'll give everyone one more moment to submit their responses. All right. Looks like we have critical mass here. A kind of a mixed bag here. We've got a better online experience for residents and optimizing and lowering costs. Those make a lot of sense to me. And I'd say that's commonly what we hear from people we're talking with, especially people we end up talking with and implementing solutions. They really want to make sure that resident experience is accounted for. How about you, KB? Do these make sense to you?
Yeah, they do. And they really go hand in hand. I mean, I think all of us understand that online is a good operational cost model. We all understand that, right? And, you know, in the city of Grand Rapids, I think they're collecting over 90% of their property tax revenue online today. Whereas before Pay It, they were sitting around 40%. So like, if you think about the savings, even just thinking about how much less mail is coming in, and then you can talk about the sustainability of that and the benefits, not only to the city in terms of how much faster revenue is coming in, but also for the residents. It's simple. And again, if you make things simple, people will do it, which lowers your costs and it accelerates revenue. We all know this. I think it's just, how do I begin? Which hopefully we're starting to provide some ideas of where to start. I think if we have one more slide around, you know, how fast could something like this happen for you? So if we think about how fast, and really it's because, so all of us understand software as a service. I don't think I need to explain it. It's basically that someone has created a platform that allows you to take best practices and implement them with your business processes in mind in an easy way. That's why we're able to have a fast implementation. So we've mentioned a couple of cities, including the city of Toronto in Canada, North Carolina, Kansas, lots of different levels of government. And that we're able to implement that experience and drive these outcomes that we discussed in a very short amount of time because our platform is software as a service. So we really focus in on your specific business rules and also provide best practices for common services that we see across North America. So our speed to implementation is honestly, we're averaging around 90 days. And I'll tell you, the first time that we implemented, and I've been at Pay It since 2016. I'm an early bird. And so I personally have implemented across cities and states and counties. And everybody looks at me like my hair's on fire when I say 90 days, but it can happen. And that's because you're separating the front end and the back end. You're utilizing something that's been purpose built to make it simple for residents. And it's running in a parallel path from your day-to-day operations. That's why it can happen so quickly. So really our big focus is, again, making sure that we think about configuration, and then we focus on what's unique to your rules. And I think that's it, Dawn.
Great. Thanks, KB, for setting the table for us. And we're excited to transition straight into a really robust question and answer session. As I introduced earlier, we have Jason and Mike ready to answer questions. And just a quick reminder, please, we've gotten a couple questions so far. Please use the Q&A to submit questions and we'll make sure to get through them. But to start things off, Mike, I'd love to talk with you. You're our technical expert on integrations. Why should the people on this webinar consider taking the approach of separating the front end and back end instead of finding a solution that could solve both?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Happy to be here. I mean, it sounds really easy, right? So like I'm already looking for a new back office system, for example, and like, why can't I just find this one-stop shop solution? And while that sounds like it should be simple and there should be companies out there that are doing it, in reality, when you're looking at a specific company for a back office replacement, as an example, they are specializing in what they do well. So, they are trying to make sure that everything that they're putting out there is for the back office system. And yes, because of competition and wanting to be in a different space, they are bolting on an add-on for the front end. The challenge is they have not done all of the efforts to make that a seamless and modern product, number one, but also they have made it very specific to the back office system that it's replacing, right? So we're talking about how those connection points to multiple systems will work and making that easy. Well, now I have tied myself down to a singular solution that is not as flexible to move over to another agency or another department and be able to continue to expand that modernization across. So now I have to go get a new system for that one and another system for that one. And now I've got 3 or 4 different experiences that are sitting out there, all disconnected across from a resident point of view. And really it starts to create that friction as we described earlier. And so, as we are looking to make this easy, more modern, make it usable, make sure it matches all the 8OE standards, I mean, these are the things that we find to be important and we want to make sure are done correctly.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. Maybe just a follow-up. Could you elaborate on the benefits of taking that approach you just explained?
Yeah, so I think Katie Beth had a lot of these great points earlier, but just to kind of reiterate those and take them home a little bit, this approach is very easy to implement in a very fast cadence. And quite honestly, this approach is highly configurable, right? The design of which, we're trying to push out a lot of these applications allows us to be flexible, knowing that there's a vast majority of use cases and business rules that it needs to support. So being able to, take elements of a certain data place from one system to another and make sure that it can be streamlined into a common interface is at the core of how this is successful. It does have the capability of being able to integrate across multiple systems and also marry those systems together. So that could be, as Katie Beth described earlier, one example could be I have 2 systems that need to talk to each other. I don't have the mechanism for them to talk to each other today. I thought I have to go build that. Well, this allows us to be able to make those systems talk to each other from behind the scenes and make it easier for residents to, for example, change their address when needs to go update in one system so they can open a utilities account and pay for their water bill. It also allows us to be able to expand on multiple services. So as we go through and launch property taxes, for example, we might be able to go to another agency and do the same thing over again, be able to continue to make sure that everything we need to do from a back office perspective is being done, but making it simple for residents to interact and make it common. It is a SaaS solution, right? So that means that agencies no longer are depending to, have to take care of yet another system, right? It's safe, it's secure, it's being updated. We're constantly making changes and making sure that it's best in class. So that goes away. We want to make it as effortless as possible, right? Allowing your residents to complete and make their payments for whatever service they want to do in a quick and easy way without having any questions or needing support. I mean, that is the overall goal. And as Katie Beth alluded to earlier as well, speed to revenue, right? So being able to make it easy means that they will pay faster. And that just means that those funds are available for agencies to be able to utilize for other things in a quicker and faster basis.
Thanks, Mike. Jason, maybe looking at this from your lens as overseeing the team doing the hands-on implementations across a broad set of clients and kind of working with everything, whether it's an API integration or not, what sets this approach apart from all the others out there?
Yeah. So as Mike said, great to be with y'all and excited about to dive into this topic a little bit further. I think Katie Beth kind of hit the nail on the head of keeping the citizen at the middle of the experience. I think it's too easy to forget why we do certain things and why we make the decisions that we do. And we feel strongly that separating the front end and the back end allows you to always keep the citizen at the center of that experience and ultimately provide a solution that matches exactly what they need. But even further beyond that, there's a couple things that we feel like sets this approach apart, from maybe doing a system that manages both. And Mike kind of started to talk about this, but ultimately there's modularity and flexibility that comes along with having a front end and a back end that are separated. Both serve critical functions, and if you try and have one system, you can't get the best in class for both of those. There's deep expertise, there's deep knowledge needed to build a strong solution across both of those parameters. And by having dual front end back end, it allows you to get the most flexibility and modularity out of a solution. As well, Mike talked about speed and being able to get speed to revenue. There's also the aspect of speed of development. So as you look to make changes, because certainly every project that we go through starts as one thing, and as we learn business requirements or as we learn changes, it has to tweak or change a little bit. And if you are looking at a full system, front end, back end, you have to think about that specific change across that entire system and across that entire ecosystem. And as Mike said, how do you marry all the systems together in a way that works time and time again and allows you to make improvements in a easy way? And I think third is security. So we know from our experience that the needs and the role of somebody who's on the front lines, maybe managing interactions with the citizens day to day, is different than a database administrator. Katie Beth talked about the mainframe. Both of those groups are very different and require different things. And by separating out front end and back end, you can specifically cater to both of those audiences, trying to balance the desires, the wants, the needs of both of those groups together is a difficult, line to kind of walk. And by separating front and back end, you can then start to have two stakeholder groups where you're then being able to meet both of their needs in a quicker turnaround time on making changes and obviously helping them solve problems.
Thanks for that, Jason. I'll switch gears here. We've gotten a couple questions. One I'll take. We had a question from the audience if we take in-person payments. Yes, we absolutely do. We support point of sale payments. We actually also support, if you need it, IVR, pay by phone, and can accept cash payments through retail systems. And the great thing about these systems that I think is really unique to us is it's all tied to the back office administration portal. So you can see how your payments are tracking and you're not having to manage disparate systems. And also they're built around the resident, just like our panelists have been saying, they can get that information on how to go pay with cash at a retail location in their same Gov wallet. So yes, we absolutely can do that and more. We also had another question about, if we've supported, someone's looking for a solution for a ferry to accept payments on site and in person. And I know we've absolutely had experience with tolling, which is one that comes to mind, but a lot of our clients do both in person and online. Any of our panelists, do you want to speak to that question or maybe more about how we support in-person and digital payments for use cases that you might not have talked about, KB?
Yeah, so we definitely, I agree with everything Dawn has mentioned. So we really create that omni-channel approach, right? And at the center of that is that unique to the citizen wallet, which allows us to talk with them for you based off of your rules across all those different payment channels. And Jason, I know you want to talk about the ferry question.
I was going to say, we're all smiling. So we're actually, both Katie Beth, myself, and Mike, we're all right in kind of the thick of a ferry project specifically. So what we're doing is really, transforming the interaction and processing of online, in-person, as well as pay-by-phone experience. So we're in the early stages of requirements gathering and kind of building out what the solution's ultimately going to look like. So we've absolutely supported that use case before. And, we really think the flexibility of, our product and engineering teams really put, again, similar to how we think about delivering a solution, they put the user at the center of the experience and think about how do we build products and solutions that allow flexibility in how an agency across property tax, DMV, courts and citations, ferry can deploy our solutions to meet multiple business cases and business needs. So we've absolutely seen that with this ferry project, and would love to, if there's time, maybe after, to connect on your pain points and how we might be able to help you. But we're certainly comfortable with utilizing our services in many different use cases.
Oh, that's awesome. Another question. Why shouldn't we build it ourselves? If I'm at an agency that has the luxury of having maybe a bigger than average staff or staff that's done this before in the past, why not just build it myself?
Yeah, that's it's a great question to ask, right? And I think it's one of those things where we run into this a lot in the industry as well. I mean, there's a couple factors that I think kind of go into this as you think about whether or not we actually take this on ourselves. The first one is there's a cost element to it, right? So we all can agree that software development is a very high cost to expense and the supporting infrastructure to support it. And so while agencies have probably a ton of modernization efforts that they have to worry about inside of their internal agencies today, they're just expanding those budgets to be able to support a solution like this that does have a significant investment to make in order to get something that is as good as something that they can go out and buy and add on to their systems. I would also say that it requires a certain level of expertise that the agency may not currently have that they need to go look for, right? Front end development for experiences and worrying about things like ADA compliance and making sure that it's easy and modern and stuff like that is a skill set that not every single agency has today. And so now you're looking for more expertise and that level of development to be able to go out and build something that will support those use cases and do it efficiently and effectively well. Time is another factor, right? I think we can all agree that the speed in which we want these solutions to be done, we want them to do them in months, not years. And there is a significant decision making process to, if I can get something online quicker, that only allows me to collect more cash faster, which allows me to fund more projects and shrink the timeline of other things. Building it into current budgets and plans, I think, only expand that time frame. And all of a sudden, it looks like a more daunting task of being able to unlock what should be something that you could be done and launch within a couple month period. Quality is another great example of that. There's significant effort that we've invested in, that other companies have invested in, to be able to make sure that when product goes out there, it's best in class. And there's a lot of effort that goes into there with user feedback testing and a lot of things to make sure that it's the best it can be. The experience is easy to use. It meets all of the right standards for folks to be able to interact with it. And so, that's another factor to be able to consider. And then the ongoing support and maintenance, right? So after we go build this great thing and we launch it, if we get to that level, it's going to have to be maintained. So there's a cost to have to go and do that by taking a solution that's already out there and plugging it in. Especially with a SaaS solution like Pay It Is, you no longer have to worry about the ongoing maintenance and support and the changes. All of that stuff gets absorbed with the solution.
Thanks, Mike. Something I think a lot of people are interested in is how you get buy-in across the org. How do you get buy-in for those who might not be supporting this approach we've been talking about? Anything to share there?
Yeah. So I'll actually maybe pull from that first poll question, where do I get started? So maybe to give some just kind of tactical, practical takeaways from today. So I think first off is goal setting, right? Even before we get to how do we get buy-in, I think we need to understand what we're trying to accomplish. Katie Beth mentioned a number of positive effects that have come from implementing Pay It or a solution like Pay It. More revenue collected digitally, more cost saved, less time waiting in person, and many other things that we could go on for a while talking about. But what's the right goal set for your organization and your agency? And how do you start with where we want to be if you don't have at least a rough idea? And to go down that path, I think attending webinars like this, having conversations with your peers, talking to those of the individuals who are on your team, starting to look at pain points and figure out where is the right place for us to drive efficiency and drive outcomes so that we start to reduce our own pain points. And that can be a starting place for goals. Second, I think it's important to identify after that is a champion and make sure that they have the right authority to go be a decision maker and have conversations. One thing that we say is, enthusiasm and authority go a really long way towards making progress, especially if it's yourself or somebody who is eager to identify ways to help you solve those pain points. So I think those are two kind of things to get organized around and get a story and get a narrative going internally before you get to, wanting to drive buy-in. But once you do get that point, a couple things to share. First is highlighting the benefits. So we've started to lay out some of those talking points today, but what will separating the front end and the back end do for your organization in terms of speed to revenue, ability to collect, et cetera? Starting to know, again, here's the goals that we're going after, and here are some of the benefits that will come from this experience, starts to pull somebody into participating in driving these kind of outcomes. Second is providing case studies and examples. So again, we shared quite a bit of data of outcomes that have been driven by implementing Pay It. There's plenty of case studies out there about what having a strong front end experience and what a separated back end experience and leaving those two things in their own ecosystems can do for you. So building case studies, sharing them with, again, those around you, those that you're trying to bring along this journey. Coming along with that is obviously addressing concerns. So if cost is a concern, talking about some of the savings that can be driven by outsourcing or bringing on a third-party vendor to help you perform some of this work, and then also the cost savings as, again, outsourcing some of this and what that can do for, your bottom line. And then starting to build kind of in that same theme, just a coalition of support and talking about the risks of not going with this approach. So Mike talked about having a single system and having potentially some fragility within that if you don't have things separated, and trying to, again, manage a full system instead of two kind of, again, connected and integrated but separate systems. There's a lot of risk to that. So starting to talk about and internally drive a conversation around what's the cost of us not doing this, or what's the cost of us doing this ourselves. And there's very real dollars attached to each of those. So making sure that not only are there, qualitative, but also quantitative measures that somebody can, fall back on and say, well, examples here, data here, and those two things go together to, again, start to drive some of that conversation internally.
Thank you for that, Jason. I did one last check through our Q&A, and it looks like we got through all the questions. We're sitting right under 45 minutes. So I just want to thank everyone for hanging in with us and give you one more resource if you haven't seen it yet. You can find in the handout section a link to this. We'll also share it out with this webinar archive. We have a buyer's guide that goes through, some of the things we talked about today, but a whole lot more about things to consider when you're evaluating a solution. So please take it, use it, and let us know if you have any questions. But thank you again for joining us, and thank you so much to our panelists. And we hope to see you guys again. Don't be strangers.